We throw the word digital around all the time, right? Our digital lives, our digital world. But have you ever actually stopped and wondered where that word, that whole idea, came from? Well, let me tell you, it's a story that's way older and honestly a lot stranger than you probably think. So let's dive into it. Okay, so let's just start with the basics. What does it really mean for something to be digital? We talk about our photos, our music, our money, but what's the fundamental thing that separates that world from, the physical one we can actually touch and feel? Well, here's the core of it, the central conflict of our story. On one hand, you've got the analog world. It's continuous, it's physical, and, this is the important part, it's fragile. But the digital world? It's totally different. It's made of these discrete, separate little packets of information. It's abstract. And because of that, it can be copied perfectly, over and over again. This one difference is what changes everything. To really get why digital was such a revolution, you have to understand the problem it was trying to solve. Before we had this digital solution, we had a very real, very physical analog problem. The whole world was running on these brilliant physical systems that were in a constant fight against decay. I mean, just picture it. In a world of machines, everything was physical. You had these incredibly mechanical clocks, right? The pride of a city. But they relied on these tiny, intricate gears. And over time, those gears would just wear down. They'd lose their edge, and time itself would literally start to drift. And this wasn't just about big machines. Information itself was physical. Think about a transatlantic phone call back in the 1930s. That was a real electrical signal sent through a massive cable on the ocean floor. But with every single mile, that signal got weaker and weaker, until a clear voice just dissolved into this frustrating mush of static. And hey, even the telegraph, which was a huge deal, wasn't safe. You send a message down a long, vulnerable wire, and anything could happen. It could get distorted or just lost completely. It really shows you that back then, information was just as fragile as the paper it was printed on. So the takeaway here is pretty clear. The analog world had some serious limits. Chasing precision was this endless, frustrating battle. And scaling things up, it was a logistical nightmare of laying more and more physical wire. Worst of all, the systems weren't adaptable. Check this out. There was a machine called the water integrator that used actual flowing liquid to solve complex equations, but it could only solve one specific type of problem. The world was desperate for a new way to think. And here is where the story takes a really wild turn. The solution wasn't some brand new 20th century invention, not at all. It was an idea, an ancient dream of a perfect, abstract language that had been kicking around for literally thousands of years. Just look at how this idea evolved over the centuries. It starts way back in the ancient world with the first bits of algebra. Fast forward to the 9th century, and the Persian scholar Al-Khwarizmi gives us the algorithm, a word we still use every day. But then, bam! The 17th century hits, and this genius polymath named Gottfried Leibniz enters the scene and changes the game. You see, for Leibniz, binary wasn't just a clever math trick. It was profound. He looked at the 0 and the 1 and saw the most fundamental thing in the universe: nothingness and unity, emptiness and creation. He truly believed this simple system could be a universal language to describe everything, from a logical proof to the very mind of God. He even put it this way with this incredible line. For him, he hadn't invented something new, he had discovered the fundamental operating system of creation itself. The difference between light and dark, being and non-being, it was all right there in a simple 0 and a 1. Okay, but a beautiful philosophical dream is one thing. How do you take that abstract idea and actually put it to work? How do you build a machine that can think in zeros and ones? Well, it happened in 3 huge leaps. First, you have Leibniz's big idea. Then, about a century later, a guy named George Boole comes along and creates a formal system of logic, what we now call Boolean algebra, where any statement is either true or false, 1 or 0. And then comes the lightning strike. In the 1930s, a brilliant engineer named Claude Shannon has a stunning realization. An electrical switch can represent this perfectly. On is 1, off is 0. And just like that, an ancient philosophical idea became a physical, working machine. This quote from the historian George Dyson just nails it. It perfectly captures the magic of that moment. The metaphysical dream of a 17th century theologian suddenly becomes the practical foundation for every single computer, every smartphone, every digital device on the planet. It's like he says, divinity met circuitry. Wow. So, all the pieces are finally on the board. We have the abstract logic and we have the physical on-off switch. But it took the singular genius of one person to put it all together and prove its earth-shattering potential. A man named Alan Turing. Now, what's wild is that in 1936, Turing didn't actually build a computer. He dreamed one up on paper, a theoretical Turing machine. And what he proved, mathematically, was that this simple, abstract machine could, in theory, solve any problem that was solvable by logic and math. He basically wrote the blueprint for the modern computer before one even existed. And then, history comes knocking with the ultimate test. During World War II, the Allies were up against the German Enigma code. This thing was a cipher so complex, it was widely considered to be mathematically unbreakable. It was the perfect, impossible problem for a machine that could think logically, tirelessly, and way, way faster than any human being. So Turing and his team at Bletchley Park built the Bombay machine, which put all these ideas into practice to crack Enigma. And its success? It proved something absolutely world-changing. For the very first time, it was undeniable that machines could dramatically outperform human minds at certain kinds of thinking. The world was never, ever going to be the same. So think about this incredible journey we just took. We started in a world full of physical friction and fragile, decaying information. Then we jumped back thousands of years to find this elegant, abstract idea about just zeros and ones. We saw how that idea was finally bridged into the real world with simple on-off electrical switches, and then saw it all proven on the biggest stage imaginable. Now, all of this incredible history is drawn from the insights in a fascinating book called Homo-Servus, The Collapse of Human Sovereignty in the Digital Era, and it's written by Dr. Wahiba Malawi, Dr. Mubarakot Mohammed, and Dr. Halima Malawi. So, if this stuff gets you excited and you really want to dive in deep, you can find the book on Amazon or you can check out the author's website at homoservus.org. And that really leaves us with a huge question, doesn't it? The whole digital revolution was born to solve the limits of the analog world, its fragility, its imprecision, its inability to scale. And, it succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. But that forces us to ask a critical question for our own time. What new limits, what new kinds of fragility is this digital age creating for us right now? Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining me.